Lewis Hamilton is back up into the podium places. Is Hamilton close enough? And he does look to be an awful lot closer. And once again, Norris makes him go the long way round, but Hamilton was close enough, under braking, to get alongside and ahead. And he does move himself up into second place to a man who's never won in Italy before and who wins the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix this afternoon. Max Verstappen, for the first time in his career, takes victory in Italy, and it was a victory by a long, long margin.
Yes! That was David Croft's call on Sky Sports, courtesy of Formula1.com. Imola does not disappoint. Yes! What a race! In the paddock, Greeny and the Cheese. Back-to-back days. We're bringing it to you. Greeny, hello.
Yeah, day 2 of a 2-day marathon here. Formula One is back. It really feels like we're starting the season all over again today. Really does. I think the intensity of the drivers showed it. I think the intensity of the fans and the day. And everyone loves Imola. Just the feel of the track. It feels very, very cozy. Like you always say, it's a real racetrack. I mean, you have fans hanging out the windows, waving their flags. And it just is a really incredible day, a really incredible race. You might not have had the 1-2 race that we had, that we saw 3 weeks ago. Feels like 2 months ago. But we did have a lot of drama, a lot of battling, and a lot of expected things happen and a lot of unexpected things happen. So we're going to run it down. But first, we're going to go to the top story, and that is Max Verstappen taking it home in Italy, in Imola. Really making it a challenge this year for Lewis Hamilton and really putting Red Bull and Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen in the spotlight this year. I think the first time in several years we've had multiple storylines throughout the year, and it looks like we're going to continue that. Who knows what's going to happen? Lewis Hamilton can go out and win the next 5 races. We all know that. But for now, for today, until we get to Portugal, the season looks like it's going to be fire.
Oh, it looks like it is going to be on like Donkey Kong, son. It looks like we're going to have the battle we've been waiting for and hoping for over the last few years. It's going to be exciting, it looks to be. We got a 1-1 right now. Lewis, I believe, is up 1 point in the championship.
Correct.
Due to his fastest lap today. So it is on, and I'm pumped for it because it's been a while. It's been a while since we had some type of battle between multiple drivers deep into the season. I think we're definitely going to get it this year.
Yeah, definitely is a strong word. Like I said, we've gone through some seasons where it's been competitive for the first, 8 to 10 races. The first half of the season from Ferrari in 2017. And so on. So, but I think this is different. I think this year is different. I think this Red Bull car is different. I think it has a lot of go to it. I think the times that they're putting up, and I think the driver in Max Verstappen is one of the best drivers in the world. And I think he's starting to prove it as, it feels like he's been around forever. I mean, what is he, 23? He came up as 17, couldn't even get a driver's license.
Like that.
Couldn't even get a driver's license when he came up in like half the world. But there he was driving 200 miles an hour on racetracks. And so it's really, really incredible. And Max Verstappen is still quite young. If he came up today being 23, he'd be a pup. But he's coming in at 23 as a grizzled veteran of the track, taking home another victory in impressive fashion. Let's talk about lap 1, and let's start at the start. And it was really impressive the way that Max Verstappen came right up. As we talked about yesterday, that was critical. I talked about the first 3 laps being critical. It was really ended up being the first 3 turns of the race that were the most critical, as Max Verstappen really took it right through Checo and Lewis, and to squeeze right into first, and didn't relent the entire race.
Oh, Max got an awesome start. He actually started in second gear, if I'm not mistaken. So that gave him a lot lower rev, so he didn't get the wheel spin. Lewis definitely had some wheel spin with the slick conditions, with the rain falling at the beginning of the race. So that was what really won it for him. He got the hot start. He didn't get any wheel spin, starting in second gear. Blew by Lewis and took it into the first corner, and away he went. Lewis then followed, and that was pretty much a lot of first little part of the race for those two, until Lewis had the kerfuffle there in Tosa, trying to make a move too quickly to try and pass somebody. One of the lapped cars, I believe it was George Russell, got into the wet patch of the track. Since the track hadn't dried yet, about pretty much the one line all that was dry pretty much once everybody switched to the slicks. Made the mistake. Lewis was out into the gravel trap. Max scooted, was pretty much gone from that point, and it was Max's race from that point forward. All he had to do was just not crash the car in the tricky conditions.
Yeah, it was really about not crashing the car too badly, right? Or not putting it into the wall, which several drivers did today. Thank goodness no one got hurt. But there was some serious kerfuffling going on, as you would say. And we'll get to that in a little bit, especially between Bottas and George Russell. But we'll get to that in a little bit. It seemed that Lewis Hamilton had some tire issues for a moment, and it seemed to reflect that in lap 26 when he pitted. I'm sorry, 29 when he pitted, but he was making moves before that. He was about 5-6 seconds behind Max Verstappen, and before you know it, by lap 26, he was within 2 seconds of Verstappen. Obviously, that didn't hold. But what happened there with Verstappen? Where was that boost that took Verstappen from being within, Hamilton being within 2 seconds of Verstappen, and then after the pits, Verstappen really took off and won by a significant amount.
Well, they pretty much Red Bull pitted at the exact right time to switch to the slick tires. That's really what happened, and Mercedes went the extra lap, hoping that Lewis could put the hammer down and go for the overcut. But the undercut proved to be the way to be today. Red Bull pitted at the exact right moment. I think they heard the call from Sebastian Vettel, who was one of the first couple drivers to actually switch to the slick tires. And once they heard him say to his team over the radio, since all teams can hear other team radio communications as well, that the dry tires were coming into the right temperatures and the right time to be on the dry tires, Red Bull made the switch right then and there. So it was the big strategy call to make that call at that exact right moment to go onto to those tires to be the right tires. And they had the big makeup in time. And then Mercedes had the struggles with Lewis's first pit stop, having trouble putting on the right front tire. So a 4-second pit stop in Formula One is a big deal. And Imola is one of the tracks that has a very long pit lane. So you do not want to have any mistakes, especially here at Imola in the pit lane. And that's pretty much where the race kind of was lost for Mercedes.
The race was lost for Mercedes in lap 32 when they all started crashing. But I think, 100%. When you saw Hamilton coming out of pit row there, or coming out of the pits, after that 4-second stop, and after Red Bull putting up like a 2.2 second stop, you saw the difference. I mean, he would have been right there. He may have been tire to tire with Verstappen coming out of the pit, and it didn't happen. And the pit was to blame for it. Lewis Hamilton. If you look back, he was complaining about some tire issues and front right tire specifically. So it is ironic that the front right tire was the issue getting that off. So there could have been something a little more there than just the pit crew not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or kind of failing again. But at the same time, we've seen so many issues over the last 6 to 8 races dating back to last year with Mercedes pit crew that, when something happens that's maybe not 100% their fault, it just makes it look worse for them, because they've had plenty of issues over the last dating back to the fall of last year.
Possibly a little chink in the chink in the armor there. Could be showing a little something. Could be like you possibly perspective. Could have been something a little extra going on. Maybe a little too much heat into the tire, and it was a little harder to get off. That could have happened. But there is a little something going on in the pit stops at Mercedes, and with Red Bull being as elite as they are in their stops, that's sometimes can be a lot of time to make up on the racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, Red Bull is consistently 2 to 3 seconds every pit stop, even sub 2 a couple times, and those 2 seconds really, really matter. I mean, 2 seconds the other way at Bahrain, and Max Verstappen would have won the race. 2 seconds difference here. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton's in a different spot, possibly coming out in first, possibly not making that boneheaded mistake because he was behind and going out into the gravel. He was pushing too hard, ended up in the gravel, ended up hitting the gas instead of reverse because he was obviously in a state of mind of probably fury at that moment. Almost wrecked out into the wall, basically stationary, and really came close to wrecking out his car right there, just driving right into the wall when he should have been hitting reverse, and really couldn't even figure out how to get the car in reverse. Obviously got it out there. It felt like he was out there for
it's not easy.
I couldn't even figure out how to turn the damn car on.
It's not the easiest thing to put these cars in reverse.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, if Lewis Hamilton,
it's not the easiest thing.
But at the same time, it felt like he was there for 10 minutes. And, you're thinking his day is done. His day is done. And he gets back on the racetrack and away we go. And, he really showed, and I think I know Bottas wrecked out, but it's pretty embarrassing to be Valtteri Bottas today. Besides wrecking out, just showing the same car and 2 different drivers and how far ahead either Lewis Hamilton is or something's wrong with Bottas where he just took a step back for whatever reason. Obviously, as we always talk about the classic Jerry Seinfeld joke of the guy of the greatest 100-meter dash of all time, the difference of is about 4 inches between the greatest runner of all time and some guy you never heard of. So it really is that close at times with these things. Really is the width of your head determines the greatest runner of all time versus some schmuck you never heard of, So it really, really is that tight when you're talking about the greatest in the world battling it out. It's as tight as you could possibly get. And yeah, I mean, Lewis Hamilton wipes out, gets back on the track. A couple laps later, he's in 5th. By lap 60, he takes 2nd as David Croft made that call at the top of the show. It's pretty incredible. I mean, obviously at that point, he was not winning the race unless Verstappen, he could have spun out too.
Crashed.
Everyone was spinning out. Everyone was doing something. But even if he spun out and got back on track quick enough, I think Verstappen still would have won the race. He had enough of a cushion there. But Lewis Hamilton, he does not give up. He could have sat back and finished 5th, and no one would have said a word, and everyone would have said, "Great job, Lewis. You're the man." He didn't. He went for it. And like I said in preseason, he is a man on fire. He is a man on fire. He's the greatest of all time, and he wants to prove he is the greatest of all time. He's not just there to make a paycheck this year. He is there to win every race.
He's the GOAT, man. He is the GOAT, and he's showing why he is the GOAT. He does not quit. We've seen it in the past when he's had to start at the back of the pack, and then he ends up finishing 2nd or before. So when Lewis puts his head down, Lewis is the best racing car driver in the world right now, hands down. He's the GOAT. He's the best driver in the world. He made the mistake. He knows it. He said so after the race. Embarrassed is what he said about it. But once he got back on the track and he put his head down and finished second. Impressive as always. It's Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton.
All I have to say about Lewis Hamilton, and I'm gonna end it here. He finished pole, came in second, and was the story of the day. All right, I mean, just think about that. Guy gets on pole, comes in second, and potentially the driver of the day. So I just chew on that one for a minute. I'm going to kick it back to you. Any final thoughts about Max Verstappen, who is getting second billing right now, even though he won the race, and Lewis Hamilton? And actually, the one question I did want to ask you: how much luck played into it, and how much did the strategy play into it with starting in second gear in the rain? The pit stop. I mean, it seemed a lot of things went the right way today with Red Bull, not just Max Verstappen driving the car wonderfully, but a lot of things also went right for the team today.
Well, sometimes that just is what has to happen sometimes to win a race. Sometimes you got to get lucky. It's better to be lucky than good some days. But Max was also very good. I mean, he was throwing down great laps. Lewis and him were lap after lap. They were almost exchanging fastest laps there for a good stretch when Lewis was putting the hammer down, passing cars left and right, just making up obscene times. But Max, sometimes you got to get it right. They got the pit stop right. Starting in second gear was absolutely brilliant. Brilliant idea. You're going to start off with lower revs, and therefore you're going to get less wheel spin, and you're going to get a better jump. It's a smart move to do in the rain. I think other drivers also do it. But it was a great move. Absolutely great move. And got him in the first and away. And when you get clean air, especially in the rain, you also get clear vision. And you remember seeing all that mist and stuff. It's a lot. It's hard to see. And to be out in front and not have to worry about any of that, that's a massive advantage. Massive advantage to have clear vision. And as I said, they got the pit stop right. Sometimes you got to have a little things go your way. They had it happen today, and they win the race. But this has also been coming and building from Red Bull. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing for Formula One to have a challenge and have a little driver's battle. We've been missing the driver battle of a team of battles, drivers going back and forth. You had Vettel and Alonso for a couple years there, going back through Formula One history. There's always been a battle between two different drivers on two different teams a lot of times. And it makes the sport exciting when they're going back and forth all season long.
Yeah, it's been a while, that is for sure. It's great to have that feeling back. It's great to really feel that we are in a Formula One season that is going to possibly come down to the wire, which is all you want. All you want is that the last race of the season is for something. So awesome start. We have not even gotten started here yet, though. We haven't even talked about Ferrari's 4-5. We haven't even talked about McLaren. We haven't even talked about Lando's ridiculous day. And we haven't even talked about Valtteri Bottas' no good, very bad, pretty awful day himself. As long as a couple other drivers that had a rough day. So we'll be back in a minute. Greenie and the Cheese in the paddock. Back after this. What's up, everyone? Greenie from In the Paddock here. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Please let me explain. It's free. Okay, free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you for free, so it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many, many more. You can make money as well. Money with your podcast. No minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Yes, welcome back, Formula One lunatics. Greenie and the Cheese in the paddock. We are coming to you post-race Imola 2021. We saw a lot of pretty great driving today. Despite the rain, we saw some wackiness. We saw some spinouts. We saw some people trying to pass where they might should have not been passing, and all that good stuff. So I know we talked about Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen ad nauseum again this week, but let's talk about the rest of the race and stuff that went down. There was a lot of other highlights to get through, especially involving Ferrari and McLaren, two of the bigger or the biggest outside of the top two. Clearly, number 3 and 4, they'll clearly be fighting it out the entire season to see who's going to come in third. And, if you told me 3 weeks ago that Ferrari had a shot for third, I'd say you were a little bit nutty, but I think you did. And I would have bet my house on McLaren coming in third this season. Glad I didn't. And so far, it looks like Ferrari's going to put up a challenge against McLaren. How do you feel? Before we get into the nitty gritty and the details here, just the raw numbers, 4-5, especially with Sainz starting 11th after qualifying, couldn't get out of Q2, and now you have Charles Leclerc, 4th place, starting 4.
Again, dude.
Yeah,
Again.
I'll do it all season for you.
Again. Are you doing it on purpose now, or are you just...
No. It's a tick. It's the way David Croft says it. It got into my brain. Listen to the way David Croft says Charles Leclerc. Just listen to it next time.
All right.
And it created a tick in my brain for listening to it for the last 3 years. Just listen to the way David Croft says it. He says
I
Charles.
will have to go listen to it.
Just listen to it again. Bear witness. And let's continue as if nothing happened.
I don't think it sounds like Sean. I don't think it sounds, but whatever. Yes, it was a really good performance by Ferrari today. Really good. Definitely feeling better. Don't feel great about them finishing third right now, but definitely feel a lot better. It was a really nice performance. A really nice performance by Sainz to bring the car back up to 5th. Charles was up there fighting near the top there in the third for a good chunk of the race. Until he got passed by Lando after Lando was given the orders, team orders to be given the chance to go by Danny, who was driving a lot slower than Lando today. Lando was flying today, though. Lando was quick all weekend, to be honest. If he didn't have the track limits issue on Saturday, he could have been starting in third, to be honest, with the speed that he showed on Saturday. So he was flying, but the Scuderia put in a performance today that they can be proud of and to build off of. 100%. Feel definitely a lot better about Ferrari getting third in constructors after today. And as they should put up a performance where at the Autodromo Internacional,
spit it out.
You got to do it when you're in your home country and you're not far from Maranello. You got to bring it. I mean, the people are hanging out of their villas, waving flags because they can't come to the track, but because of the old school nature of Imola being right basically in the village, basically of Imola, these people can watch from their windows and their little patios and balconies. So you got to bring it when you're at home, and whenever a team is in their home country, they want to bring it. Of course, Ferrari would have loved to win the race in Italy, but let's be real here. Podiums are a possibility. Being on top of the podium is no chance unless the Mercedes and Mercedes and Red Bull have some kind of issues. Other than that, they have no chance of winning a race this year. I don't see it. But the possibility of getting third in the constructors is definitely there, and I definitely feel a lot better.
Yeah, so just to give you a heads up about the names, going back to that, my most famous screw up of all time, by the way, was actually on the Mike Francesa show. No joke. I don't know if I ever told you this story. But I was proposing a trade. I got on with Mike Frances and I was proposing a trade, and I was proposing anyway to get to the crux of it. I was talking about Derek Lowe from the LA Dodgers, but I called him Rob Lowe. And there's only about 3 million people listening to that one. And Francesa thought I was messing with him, but I was serious. I was calling Derek Lowe Rob Lowe. I said about 3 times, and until Francesa hung up on me. And that's a true story. So that's a true story. But anyway, back to the race. Yeah, listen, I totally agree with you on a couple things. First of all, as we said, and as you said, the whole preseason into the first race and now into the second race, I'm starting to agree with you that Ferrari is going to show something this year. They're definitely have a shot, a legitimate shot. Let's see if it continues to carry over through the next couple races. But yes, it looks like we're going to have a battle for first and second. We're going to have a battle for third and fourth, and we're going to have a battle for fifth and sixth and seventh as well, all the way down. So there's going to be some mini battles with teams going on to keep the interest of the Formula One fan throughout the season. And I think that both McLaren and Ferrari have potential over the next 2 to 3 years if they continue, if Red Bull continues, to provide engines, if a lot of things go right over the next 2 to 3 years, I think you might have a really competitive field with all those 4 constructors really putting out competitive times, because it seems that the gap has closed tremendously over the last 2 to 3 years. And now we're seeing the fruits of all that labor. We're seeing the fruits of Ferrari taking a step back to take a step forward. That McLaren and everything they've put in, especially over the last 2 seasons, and Red Bull spending the last 3 seasons really getting ready for the 2021 season. And I think if Mercedes continues to put up a good car every year, I think we're in for another 3 to 5 years of really, really good competitive racing, which is really exciting, especially coming back from the last 3 to 5 years of generally uncompetitive racing. Generally, we had a lot of races where it was just like Mercedes 1-2, Ferrari 3-4, Red Bull 4-5, 4-5 and all the way down, or 5-6 and all the way down. And it was very predictable. I mean, we had a couple of very predictable seasons, and now we have a lot of unpredictability, which just makes for interest, makes for intrigue, and you have to love it. You have to love what you've seen so far in the first 2 races, especially from the top 4 teams.
I do, but next year's going to be the big interesting moment. That's where you really don't know what's going to happen, to be honest, with the major rule changes. So, because you have teams out there that put no money into this year's car because they don't care, because they're worried about they're putting all the development into next year's car with the rule changes. So this year is very interesting in the aspect that it depends on how much money and devotion you really want to put into this car, when this car is not going to be anything like next year's car. So it depends on where you're going to put your money for development. So you might see some of these teams not put as much development in. They're going to kind of stick with what they got once they get to a certain part of the season, because they're just going to go with development for the next year's car and with the rule changes that are coming. So next year you could have a lot more teams in the mixes, depending on, just for an example, you could say Alfa Romeo, because they're putting no money into this year's car pretty much. They could be a top 3 car next year because all their development is in next year's car. But that's where some things here, even in the mid-pack, is very interesting on where teams are going to put their money into for development for this year, and what they're going to worry about more next year. So this could be really where cars are going to be the rest of the season, because you have big rule changes next year, and some teams might not want to really gamble too much on spending a lot on this year's car.
Yeah, and when you talk about not spending money, let's talk about it in relative terms. Mercedes had to, I think, put up close to $500 million to run their team last year, $465 million, $470 million, $500 million, pretty much like the gross domestic product of a small country to run their vehicles. So when we talk about it not spending money, we're talking about hundreds of millions, close to $500 million spent. So these guys spend some serious coins. So not spending money means they probably spent $150 million. So, it really is, relatively speaking, how much money these teams spend. So those of you listening at home that don't understand the money and the dollars, it's a ton of money to run these vehicles.
Oh, it's big money, but Mercedes spends $500 million, and because they spend $500 million, they've been the best racing team in the world for the last 5-6 years. So that's why a lot of the teams that are usually up near the top in Formula One actually do end up spending the most amount of money, and the teams that are on the bottom don't spend the most amount of money because you got to spend. I think the ratio is something like $20 to $30 million to get like a tenth off of your lap time. That's a lot of money. And the smaller teams can't afford to put in the money that Mercedes can in their factory team. So you sometimes you got to put your money where you can and be a little bit more frugal and not be able to develop the car as well. So I think that's why a lot of the teams that are in the back of the pack know they're going to be at the back of the pack and have pretty much said we're not developing this year's car, which is just basically going to be the same as last year. Make the little changes that they had to do to get the car to be within this year's regulations. But besides that, they do not care about this year's car because they're putting all their money into developing next year's car with the major rule changes that are coming. So that's, the little balance that teams have to make at the back of the pack, or, these teams at the back of the pack could be, a lot more competitive and then therefore get more money because Formula One is trying to go, if I'm not mistaken, to try and have all the teams spend more of an equal ratio to get more of an even keel, a lot more excitement, a lot more teams involved in races to give more excitement to the fans. And I think that's what Formula One's direction is. They're trying, it's taken over by an American company. They want to go in the direction a little bit, I would say, into the NASCAR-esque direction, but still open wheel and have it more of an even keel that you're not going to have the same teams just winning over and over and over again, have some different teams in there in the mix and have it more exciting for more fans to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. I think it's been 3 or 4 years since the U.S. company has taken the reins here. And really, it was about a 20-year plan, right, to really diversify the sport, bring it to some other countries that may not have had Formula One before. We all know Formula One is successful in the countries it is. It's like baseball in New York City. You can make it as dull as you want. It's always going to be successful. Same with Formula One in, most of Europe and Asia at this point. It's just going to be successful. So some tweaks to bring in some more fans. You're talking about, again, $500 million to run a winning team, $400 or $500 million to run a winning team. That money has to come from somewhere, and that's continuing to build the fan base bigger and bigger, bring these races throughout the world. It is really one of the only, if not the only, true global sport, true world champion, true drivers from all across the globe. You really don't have that mix, and it continues to diversify itself. So I think it needs to lend openness there with that. And you talk about not spending money, and we talk about the back of the pack. How is it though when you have a team spending $400 or $500 million in the front? And is there any danger? I know we saw, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about, Haas and Mazepin and all that, but I mean, they were really far behind. I mean, they're really, the difference is palpable, especially with someone like Mazepin, who obviously can't drive the car to the level of even his teammate. And is it dangerous out there? Is it troublesome out there when guys are getting passed 2-3 times, lapped several times over the course of a race? I think Mazepin got lapped by Schumacher towards the end of the race there.
Well, Mazepin is trash. So for him to spin out and drive like a grandma, it's not surprising because he can't handle the car. And I think even Gunther Steiner said, he's got to be more respectful and understand this is, a different car, and he's going to drive to the car's limits. He can't be spinning the car out all the time. It's not the way, but he's going to be in that seat because of money. That's the only reason he's in the seat is money. Let's be real. He shouldn't be in the seat. Everybody knows he's not worthy of it. A lot of drivers have come in and said he doesn't respect the sport. He doesn't respect the cars that he's driving. So he's, pretty much just rubbish and trash, to be honest. So for him to stink, it's not surprising. I mean, his teammate, he's putting in a lot better performances because he understands and he's driving the car. Mazepin stinks. Plain and simple.
It really wasn't the question if he stinks or not. We know he stinks. The question was, is it dangerous to have someone that's that bad out on track? I mean, I think it's.
We've had teams in the past that have been passed and been lapped multiple times. Going back even like Minardi, HRT, which was a team recently that folded. I mean, they only folded because they couldn't, the money wasn't there to be able to run the team, but they were getting lapped 2, 3, 4, 5 times during the race because the car was just that slow. I mean, but what they did? They came to the track. What Minardi even said back in the day when Minardi was in existence? Yeah, we're going to run at the back of the pack every race, but we come to race because we can, and we love it. And if you want to be at the back of the pack and that's what you're going to be, sometimes, hey, that's good enough because you come to race because you love it and you can. And I can also respect that.
Well,
you're going to be the back of the pack. You don't have the money. You don't have the money to compete. But hey, we're going to come. We're going to show up. We're going to try. We're going to race because we love the race. And I can respect that.
Yeah, well, back of the pack, front of the pack. I think we covered a lot of it today. We're going to continue. We have one more segment to go, and I think am I riding in the back of the pack or the front of the pack? Let's see how my bets came in. Next segment, I put some serious coin down last night. I did it live as we were doing the podcast, so that is up from last night from the episodes. You want to check that out. And we're going to come back and we're going to give our results. I think we both did pretty well. I think we both had some good calls. Who had the better call? Who had the worst call? And who's going away with some cash? Greeny and the Cheese in the paddock. Back after this. We are back. Greeny and the Cheese in the paddock. We have entered the gambling section of our audio and of our podcast. But first, we'll be really remiss to not go over a major event that did happen and a red flag and a complete stoppage of the race on lap 32. And, it's always scary, and especially where the accident happened. It's reminiscent of 1994, as you said, Cheese. And, break down the accident, break down how scary it was to crash there and really the danger and shows how dangerous some of these racetracks can be.
Well, it's one of the fastest, it's the fastest part of the track. It goes down into the first chicane or the Variante Tamburello. It's, as you just stated, it is where the track was actually changed because of what happened there in 94. When Senna died. So it is a scary corner. It's had some people even on air at Sky Sports a little tweaked and a little freaked out because of where that accident did occurred. But what happened is Russell was coming up behind Valtteri, hit the slipstream and the DRS, went to make the move on the outside. Valtteri made a little slightly move to the right. Russell got a little freaked, got his car moved over a little bit, caught the grass, and because of being wet after the rain, revs went through the roof. The car snapped, and he's hit in the Bottas, and both guys slammed into the wall, came across the track, and slammed on the other wall. Very scary situation. Valtteri took a little bit of time to get released from the medical center because he took a very hard hit. Russell was extremely steamed at Valtteri after that. Even walked up to the car and was screaming at him. Valtteri then gave him the finger, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a very scary situation. It's a part of the track that just brings up a lot of bad memories for people. Even outside of Senna, a few other drivers have perished at that corner. It's a reason why the track was changed to put that chicane in there to try and slow the drivers down a little bit, because that corner used to be pretty much full out. You would even take your foot off the gas before they changed the track. It also proves to show the massive safety development that has gone into Formula One for drivers to take a massive hit like that at speeds at 190, 195 miles an hour at that section of the track, and to walk away from it.
Yeah, I think the key was 185 miles an hour, just shy of 300 kilometers an hour. That's how fast these vehicles were going when they got into that accident. And if you've ever been in a vehicle going 180 miles an hour, and I doubt many who are listening have been in a vehicle going 180 miles an hour, you feel the G's, man. That is fast. That is about as fast as you can be going in a vehicle that's not a spaceship. So it's pretty damn fast to go with that. And that's scary. That is scary. That the leaps of technology to keep these drivers safe, even in the worst situations. I mean, it was a situation where, it was wet grass. It was, just a slight move in the wrong direction. And the Williams driver crashes out. I mean, George Russell just crashed out and crashed into Bottas. It was hard to tell exactly who was to blame. I don't know what the result was post-race. I know there was nothing announced. I don't think there was anything announced during the race as far as penalties or anyone that the finger was pointed at. But
I don't think there was any penalties. I don't think there will be any penalties, to be honest. It's probably you could say it's a 50-50 kind of deal. You could even say it's a little 60-40. You might be able to put it in, maybe even both. You could, depending on who you say we're a fan of, or you could go in either direction, 60-40. To be honest, I'd really have to take a longer, hard look at it over and over before I'd be able to give my guess. Not like my guess or my thoughts really matter.
Well, I mean, there's going to be some serious
things.
Right at this moment, I'm sure that there's just some discussion going on, because that was a scary incident. It was the wrong turn to happen at, and it's, thank God they all walked away. And we don't even know if Valtteri Bottas, who spent a lot of time in the medical tent, we don't know if he's 100% right now. We're only on here, a few hours after the race. We're not sure what that result's going to be, and it's really difficult to tell what an injury like that, what a concussion or a head injury or something like that really has until the next day or until a couple days later. So,
well, it also shows the safety because of the halo. If the halo wasn't there, the side part of the halo wasn't there. Actually, Russell's tire probably would have hit Valtteri in the head. So, the safety thing with the halo again, proves that it was a great thing to put on the car.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have those tragedies, and as we talked about, Senna's tragic death right there in 1994. But it's if you want to keep the sport going, and I think Art and Senna would agree, just the same. Without knowing him personally, would be, continue the sport, continue to be safer and smarter, and the leaps and bounds they have come, to make sure that these tragedies that happen on the track are never in vain. And we're continuously building on it and making the sport safer, and ultimately making your vehicles that you drive every day safer vehicles to drive because of these tragedies. But again, you're doing 185 miles an hour, wheel to wheel. you have wet grass, and that's what happens. That's really just what happens.
Yeah. 100%, dude. 100%.
But anyway, from tragedy to triumph. Put some bets in. All right, so we had some deep discussion yesterday on who was going to win the race. I had Max Verstappen, you had Lewis Hamilton. Max won the race, so I took that one. Then we had our trifectas. And I nailed it. And I think you also, credit to you, kudos to you. We both had the same 3. You had Hamilton in first, Max in second, and Lando Norris in third. I was surprised by your Lando Norris pick, but I went the same way with Lando Norris. And it turns out we were both correct with Lando Norris starting 7th and finishing 3rd. Another impressive performance, another multiple climb as far as from where he started to where he finished 2 weeks in a row. Lando Norris now on the podium. Very, very impressive. Pat on the back to McLaren for a great race and really a great young driver. So I was really happy with that. 20-1 odds on the trifecta. So I'm very happy with that result. And then we talked about the biggest climber of the day, and who had the most spots gained. And I picked Yuki, and he did it. Although Yuki was, as I checked out last night, was the most popular pick in Las Vegas last night for the highest spot return. So that, I believe he tied with Kimi Räikkönen, but I believe Kimi might have lost a spot or gotten a penalty after the race. I'm not sure how that panned out. But regardless, worst comes to worst, it was a tie.
I think was it 10 seconds?
Oh, 10. So he was out of the points. So Kimi was finished 9th and got some points, but it looks like he is out of the points with 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, I think he was out of the points. I think he ended up being out of the points, and if I'm not mistaken, Alonso got into the points because of that.
Yeah, Alonso finished 11th, so if he went down, he would have finished in points. And it also would have given who finished 10th. Esteban Ocon. So at least he got another point out of it as well. So Ocon moves into 9th. Alonso moves into 10th. That rounds out the top 10 for the day. And Kimi, who ran another great race. I don't think we talked about Kimi last week, picking up 3 spots last week, and now picking up another. It was 7. Probably going to be 4 or 5, but still he's picking up spots every single week. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Iceman, but impressive start. Definitely someone to keep an eye on this year and making the Alfa Romeo a little more palpable this season. And obviously the other shining star.
Alpha's really going nowhere. Alpha is not putting anyone in the
driving
car,
that car.
So yeah, but you put it. A lot of things happen today. Kimi's also a veteran and can drive in the wet a lot better than a lot of other drivers can. Some guys struggle a little bit in the wet conditions. They're not that great in the wet. Other drivers excel in the wet. Kimi excels in the wet. He's the Iceman. He's a legend. He's been in the sport for many, many moons. So he's a veteran. He understands how to drive in the wet. So am I surprised that he was up at that point, up that high in the standings? Not that much. The Alfa Romeo wasn't that god awful of a car last year. I mean, Kimi was up there at some points of the season last year, and then with the improvement in the Ferrari engine this year, they're gonna get more horsepower out of that, so they're gonna definitely get a little bit more performance. So my surprise, not really, but he got the penalty, and then he's out of the points. So you get poo-poo kachoo, you get nothing.
And may I remind you, he did finish 11th in Bahrain as well. So back-to-back looks like 11th place finishes. I don't know where he exactly landed this week.
13th?
13th, all right. So 11th and 13th, back-to-back races. We'll see what the Iceman can produce in a less than stellar car. Some other notables of the day, Some of the biggest riders, obviously Carlos Sainz, plus 6 positions. Started in 11th, finished in 5th. Very impressive. As well as, of course, Lando Norris, who we spoke about earlier. And a little bit from the back, Fernando Alonso, plus 5. Plus 5 as well. If he finished 10th, started 15th. Impressive for another former champion as well, picking up 5 positions over the course of the day. So very interesting across the board. Really, you're seeing some of these veterans really in inferior cars in most cases, really be able to maneuver the field and picking up some valuable places and valuable spots throughout the race. So kudos to them. I think we did not talk about Checo, and losing 10 spots, went from best to worst. Probably one of the best drivers in Bahrain to one of the more disappointing drivers today. Starting on the front row, for the first time in his career, and failing to muster up any points. And as we talked about last night on the show, really about the curse of the second seat of Red Bull. How do you feel about the curse of the second seat of Red Bull after watching today's performance?
I mean, you got to give him. I think he even said himself, he needs about 4 to 5 weekends races in the car. I mean, he's even said he's still adjusting. Christian Horner, after the race, said he's still adjusting the car. It's way different than the car that he had been driving for the last number of years. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to it. Then you throw in the crazy tricky conditions that were out there today. He spun off. So at one point, but a lot of guys were slipping and sliding. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, the greatest driver in the world, slid off the track today by making a misadjustment with the slick tires and getting out in the wet part of the track since it wasn't dry yet, and put himself in the gravel trap. So, I mean, he needs some time to adjust to the car before you can say if he's going to have the curse of the second seat of Red Bull with Max Verstappen at this point yet.
A little early, I will admit, a little early, but something to look out for. And another storyline for the year. Another faller as well was Pierre Gasly, who lost 3 positions. I don't think too much of a surprise there. And that was about it. I mean, the rest of the field pretty much finished strong, or finished where they were, or finished within a couple spots of where they started. So, again, a lot of interesting things happened today. I thought overall it was another great
issues
race
at Aston Martin. Issues at Aston Martin. There's issues at Aston Martin.
What kind of issues are we talking
There's
about?
issues at Aston Martin. All kinds of reliability issues. I mean, didn't both cars before the race even started, weren't they changing parts of the brakes because they had they melted through on both cars?
Yes.
Not just one car, on both cars. And then they were also having both cars were also having transmission, like clutch issues, if I'm not mistaken. It got so bad that they actually told Vettel to just bring it in and park it with a few, with just a handful of laps remaining. So there's issues at Aston Martin right now. Big issues. Big issues at Aston Martin.
Oh, yeah. I was pretty surprised that Vettel so late in the race just parked that car. It was pretty late. I mean, I know he wasn't going to score any points, but I just thought it was an interesting decision, with like.
Well, I don't think you want to, they didn't want to, they didn't want to have a gearbox go and then, go through you're only allowed so many gearboxes for the season. So once you go through those, you start taking grid penalties. So I don't think you wanted to lose a gearbox there and end up having to, go to a different gearbox and not go through your allotment so you don't get grid penalties. I think that's what that was. Park the car. Let's not lose it. We can go back and, take a look at it, and they can, do little things to it to, see what happened to it. But, you don't want to go through that allotment at that point in time. You don't want it to, especially you didn't want it to, gearbox to go and lock the tires up or something on a wet racetrack and send your driver into the wall. So it's a little bit of a safety issue, I think, for the reason they parked the car as well.
Yeah, and as we talked about last week, how many races is Sebastian Vettel not going to finish this season? Here's one on the board. I probably expect some more coming. It won't be the
Well,
first.
like I just said, there's issues. There's issues at Aston Martin. I mean, you were on your parade. You were on your not even a formation lap. It is your safety check lap, basically. You come out the pit lane. You drive around the track just to make sure all the bits and things are working. The tires are on. The engine's running okay. The brakes are working. Things like that. And you get back. You come back onto the straight to park the car, and you've melted. Your brakes have melted through. That's an issue. That's a major issue. There's something going on. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think I heard the principal there was asking for some type of regulation changes or lack of laxing on some of the regulations, so that probably the Aston Martin can gain a little bit of advantage that they lost over the little changes that they did from last year to this year in the rules, because their car isn't performing as it was last year. I mean, come on. You got a lot of problems. Why don't you fix them like everybody else did? Spend some development, fix the car the way you're supposed to. The Aston Martin kind of looks like crap right now. I mean, you got issues going on.
It's pretty embarrassing out there. The Aston Martin is pretty embarrassing. It looks like could be an 8th place finish, 7th or 8th for Aston Martin. I think I haven't looked. I mean, there's very, very few points scored at this moment from the bottom 6 constructors at this moment. It's really all been very heavy in the top 4. But yeah, I mean,
we're only 2 races in.
We're only a couple races in. I think there's going to be very interesting. Again, 5, 6, and 7. Very interesting. It looks like Alfa Romeo will probably be solidly in like 8th, with Williams 8 and 9 battling, and Haas is just dead last. Just terrible. So, as the season's beginning here, we're kind of seeing how things will start falling out maybe towards the end. Obviously, we have 21 more races to go. We're back here on May 1st after qualifying in
a fortnight.
Portugal, in a fortnight.
A fortnight.
We will return in a fortnight from Portugal. And
if I'm not mistaken, won't this be a back-to-back as well? We will get Portugal, and then a week later we are at Catalonia, Barcelona, if I'm not mistaken.
Catalonia. Yeah. Are we going to get back-to-back? I thought we're going to get...
I thought the next is...
I thought it was Portugal.
I thought next is a back-to-back, and then there's the traditional... was it 2 weeks till we get to Monaco?
No, Monaco's on the 23rd this year, I think. Monaco's early. I don't think Monaco's on actually Memorial Day weekend this year.
Is that so?
I think it's so.
I am bringing that up right now. Una momenta, por favoro.
I think we have 3 weeks maybe between Portugal. I don't know. Check the schedule again. Maybe I misread the schedule.
I'm bringing it up.
We're definitely in Portugal in 2 weeks.
Now.
That's for sure. And
yes, we are at Portugal the 30th through the 2nd of May. Then we are in Spain the 7th of May to the 9th of May. So that would be the following weekend. And then the next race will then be in Monaco on the 23rd, as you said.
So we got 3 races in 4 weeks. 3 races in 4 weeks. So get ready. We're going to have a week off. We're going to come back, and we're going to have 3 amazing races in 4 weeks. After that, by the time we get to Monaco, and when Monaco's done, we're really going to have a good idea of what the season's going to shape out to be. In 5 races in, it's going to be an exciting stretch. It's going to be an exciting season. We hope to see everyone here all season long. Post-qualifying, post-race, grinning the cheese in the paddock. Any parting words of wisdom?
We will see you in a fortnight for Portimao, Portugal. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And
See you in a
again,
fortnight.
if you want to get in touch with us, in the paddock USA at gmail.com. You can also reach out cheese in the paddock at Instagram, and on Instagram as well, Greeny in the paddock. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, your suggestions, and any questions we receive. We'd love to read them right here on the show. So stick around. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Oh, you got one more thing.
Shout out again to our people in the land of the cheese, in Milwaukee, the good land. Shout out to Milwaukee.
Shout out to Chicago, Illinois as well. Thanks for listening. All across the country.
Midwest.
All across the country, the Midwest is strong with listeners. So we really appreciate you guys listening, taking the time, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Peace.